It's another tutorial, guys, and I'm so excited to have you back to my channel. You're highly welcome back. So on today's tutorial, we're going to be learning how to make a notched collar jacket. Okay, we're going to be making a blazer jacket. Okay, a notch collar blazer jacket. So I have my paper here, and I'm just going to measure the length I am working with. Okay, so I'm working with length of 29 inches, and I'll just go ahead and mark that point. Okay, and I'll proceed to connect with my straight ruler. And after connecting from that line now, that is going to be serving as my shoulder line, I'm going to be measuring my chest line. So I measure from my shoulder to my chest line, and I'm just going to pick up my ruler and connect the line, and I'll measure again from my shoulder to my bust point line, and I also mark that point and connect with my straight ruler as well. Then next, I'll also measure from my shoulder to my waistline. I will mark and connect into a straight line with my ruler as well. Okay, so after making my connection, I am going to proceed to labeling all the lines, as you can see. So here's my shoulder, my chest, my bust point, my waistline, and here my length. Okay, so now it will be time for us to start imputing our measurements properly. Okay, so on my shoulder line, I'm just going to divide my shoulder measurement by 2, and I'm going to impute what I get on my shoulder line and on my chest line, and I'm going to connect into a straight line as shown. So next, I'm going to slope my shoulder by 1 inch, and I'm using neck width of 3 inches, and I went on to mark it, then pick my ruler and get my shoulder slope. So next, I'll divide what I have on my shoulder line and get the midpoint and mark there, after which I'll divide my bust circumference by 4, mark there, and I'm going to connect the points to form our back armhole. Okay, note that we're drafting our back parts first, so that when we are done, we're going to be using the back neckline to draft the front neckline. So what we are drafting right here is our basic bodies for the back. So I proceeded to use my to measure 2 inches for my neck depth and connected with my curve ruler. Okay, so I'm going to measure my bust circumference divided by 4, mark it on the bust line, and my waist circumference divided by 4, mark it on the waistline as well. Okay, so next I'm going to measure from my waist to my hip line, which is 9 inches, and I'll mark. Then on that point, I'm going to measure my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'm just going to mark it there, and on my hem as well. So after that, I'm going to pick up my ruler, and I'm just going to connect all the lines together. So I was not connecting, and here is what we have. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to get my dart. I'm going to measure my bust span divided by 2, and I'm going to mark on it, and I will mark also on my bust point line and on my chest line, and from my waist I am going to go down by 5 inches. So I went on to connect, and from my waist I'll go down by 5 inches and I'll mark. Then I'll also mark my bust span divided by 2 at that point. Then I'll proceed to connect into a straight line. Okay, so on the waistline, I came in and out of the new line by 0.5 inches. I'll connect up to my chest line, and also down to the 5 inches I measured downwards. Okay, so I was done connecting, and next thing I'm going to do is to measure what I have on my dart area there on my waist and replace my darts. So at this point, I'm going to reconnect to my dart replacement. Okay, and after which I'm going to shed on the old line, because the line we're going to be working with is the new line. All right, so that is that, and I'm just going to measure what I have on my shoulder line by measure it and divide it into two, mark there, and I'm going to connect from that point to my chest line. Okay, so on the hem side, that is the down, I'm going to extend that nipple to nipple point divided by two. I'm going to extend it, that is my bust span divided by two. I'll just extend it to the hem and connect to the existing straight line. Okay, so on the waistline of the center bag, I came in by 0.75. This is to eliminate zipper bulge. And I'll connect up to the bust point line, and I'll also connect down to the 5 inches I measured downward. Okay, and I'm just going to shade that part as well as the dart area. Okay, so you can see that our bag is almost ready. So on the hem, I came up by 1.5 inches so as to make a curve around there, so I'll not have a pointed edge there, and I divided what I have into to mark on the midpoint, and proceed to using my curve ruler to connect that line. Okay, so at this point our back part is ready, and I'm just going to pick up my scissors and I will just cut out. Okay, so after cutting out, I'm going to get another paper for our front part. So if you have watched at this point and you have not subscribed, please go ahead and hit on the subscribe button. Also like this video, drop a comment for me. If you have any question, you can ask. If you don't have, drop a thank you message for me. If you think there's anywhere I need to make adjustments or where you want me to improve on, please don't hesitate to let me know. I really appreciate your kind gesture. I will appreciate your feedback on this video. So I have this paper here, and it's the same length with my back part. Okay, and I proceeded to rule on my vertical lines, my shoulder line, my chest, my bust point, my waist, and my hip line, as well as the length. Okay, so the only difference here is that I decided to rule a line on my hip area. Okay, but every other thing, they are just as the same as the back part that we just drafted. So I proceeded to measuring 2.5 inches that we're going to set aside for our notched collar. Okay, for our notched. Okay, so for our lapel, anyone you call it. So I went on to rule it into a straight line from my shoulder to the hem. Okay, so from this new line now, we're going to be imputing other measurements. So I went on to divide my shoulder by two, mark it on the shoulder line and on the chest line, and connected into a straight line. So I sloped my shoulder by 1 inch as well, and marked my neck width of 3 inches, and went on to connect my shoulder slope as shown. So the next thing that I'm going to be doing is to divide what I have on my armhole line into two, mark on the midpoint, and come in by 0.5 inches. Then proceed to marking my bust circumference divided by 4 on the chest line, and I'll just connect with my curve ruler to form our front armhole curve. Okay, so note that we're working on the front part right now. So I was done connecting, and you can see what we have. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to get our dart. So I divided my bust span by 2, impute it on the waist part, on the bust point, on the hip line, and the hem as well. So I'll just pick up my straight ruler, and I'm just going to connect all the dots into a straight line. Okay, so on the waist side, I'm going to measure 1/2 inch in and out of the new line. I'll connect to my bust point area, and also connect measured 5 inches below the waistline and mark. Then I also connect the dart line to that point as well. Okay, so I was not connecting, and the next thing I'm going to be doing is to start working on our neck. Okay, so I came down by 3 inches for our neck depth, and I proceeded to connect with my curved ruler. Okay, so you can see what we have there. All right, so I divided what I have on my shoulder line by 2, mark on the midpoint, and also went ahead to connect it to the bust point area. Okay, so After I was done doing that, the next thing I did was to impute my bust circumference by divided by 4 on my bust point area, my waist circumference divided by 4 on my waist, and I replaced my 1 inch that, and also my hip circumference divided by 4 and mark it as well, and also mark it on the hemline as well. So after that, I'm just going to pick up my ruler and I'm going to connect all these lines together. Okay, so I was not connecting and this is what we have, and I came up again by 1.5 inches on the hem, divided what I have into two, starting from the new line I ruled on the 2.5 inches, mark the midpoint, and I'm just going to make the same curve I made on the back. I'm just going to make it on the front as well. Okay, so I was not cutting it, curving it out, and now I'm going to proceed to working on the neckline area. Okay, so remember our back neck, I'm just going to measure it to get the measurement around there, and we're going to be using it for our front. So I proceeded to measure it, and after measuring it I have 4 inches. Okay, I have 4 inches for the back at that point. Okay, so on this neck area I'm going to measure that 4 inches that I just measured for my back, and I'm going to mark it. Okay, so after marking it, I'm going to connect it to the neck width into a straight line. Okay, so you don't make it very straight. I actually connected with a dotted line at first, after which I went up in by 0.5 inches and connected, and as you can see, it's looking a bit slanty. And I also proceeded to measure from that point the wideness of my collar. So I'm using 3 inches, and that is what I measured there. So at this point I connected with a dotted line because it's not going to be the correct line. So I want to attach another paper at this point so that I can make a curve of angle 90 at that point. Okay, so I proceeded to attach another paper and I made an angle 90 curve around there. You can see I went up by 0.75 and connected. So you can also go up by 0.5 inches and there is no harm to it. Okay, I went up by 0.5 inches, sorry. So you can see what we have, and we are going to start working on this waistline. So we're going to determine where we want our button to start. So mine, I want it to start at this waistline. So I proceeded to measure 1 inch. Okay, I measured 1 inch, and I'll just get my ruler and rule it into a straight line from the hem to the waistline. Okay, because that is where I want my button to start from. Okay, that is the breaking point. All right, and I proceeded to connect to the neck width. Okay, you can see the way I placed my ruler. I connected from the neck width to that point. Okay, and I'm just going to extend this neck depth area to the 2.5 inches I measured. So do you see what I have there? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to determine the wideness of my lapel. So I want my lapel to have this 2.5 inches that I measure here. So if you want yours to have something lesser, you go ahead and measure just what you have. But because I'm okay, I proceeded to connect it back to the waistline as well. So do you see what we have here? So the next thing I'm going to do is to, from this line now, I'm going to measure 1 inch. Okay, from this line here I'm going to measure 1 inch. You can see what we have there. So you can also use 0.75. It's okay. So you see the 1 inch I measured at that point, I also came up by 0.5 inches. You see the 0.5 inches I'm marking at that point. So I'm just going to connect that 1 inch to that 0.5 inches I marked there. Okay, so just pay attention to what I'm doing. I know you follow along. So do you see what we have there? You see what we have there? Okay, so from this point now I'm going to connect to the collar up there with my curve ruler. Okay, so you're not going to use the most deepest curve, just the shallow curved part. Okay, so I'm just going to place it this way and I'll go ahead and connect. Okay, so you see the connection I made there, right? So point of correction, please. This collar, the wideness of this collar is 2 inches. That is 2 inches on fold, not 3. Okay, so when we open it up we'll have 4 inches. Okay, so take note of that. So I proceeded to cutting all the part out. So I want you to pay rapt attention to the part I'm cutting here, because I know at this point some may feel that it is a bit complicated, the line is confusing, but it is really not. Just pay attention to the lines I'm cutting and you follow along. You will not get confused. So this is our center front and our side front. So I'm just trying to label it there, but the pen I'm using is not even showing clearly, so don't worry, I am going to use my marker to label it again. Okay, so I proceeded to cutting that place, so we're going to cut it out and so that we can be able to join it back. Okay, when cutting on our fabric we're going to add our joining allowances and join back. Okay, so just pay attention to what I am cutting out. All right, so here you can see our back part is ready, and I will just proceed to cutting out the front part. Okay, so please, if you have any question, like I said earlier, you can ask. If you have any feedback, any observation, you are very free, okay, to say anything you observe. All right, so you can see what we have, and this is all for the front and the back. So I'm going to get another paper we are going to be using to cut out our sleeve. So here is the new paper, and the first thing I'm going to do is to measure my sleeve. So I proceeded to measure my back sleeve and this other one as well. So it's important you measure your front and back armhole, sorry, armhole, not sleeve. So I've measured my back, and the new one I just measured is my front. Okay, so here is my paper, and I'm just going to rule out the length that I'm going to be working with, and I'm just going to mark that point. And after that I am going to measure what I have and divide it into two. I'm going to mark on the midpoint. Okay, so after marking on the midpoint, connecting into a straight line with my ruler, I'm still going to divide what I have into two on the upper part. Okay, That is what actually did. I divided the upper part into two. Okay, so after which I went up by 0.5 inches again and marked. Okay, so in all I have 4.5 inches. Okay, from the upper part. Okay, so this is the mid sleeve. This is the midpoint of my sleeve. That is what I just label, and you can see what I have after measuring. I have 4 inches there, and 4.5 inches, sorry. So the first thing I am going to do is to measure the wideness of my sleeve around there. So I'm just going to curve this point, okay, towards the wideness of my sleeve that I measured, and I'm just going to measure it and divide it into two, and I'm going to mark on the midpoint. Okay, and I'm going to redivide the second part as well. So if you have been watching my video, you'll be very conversant with drafting a basic sleeve. Okay, the only difference is that this one is it came down, and because of our pad that we're going to add on the shoulder. Okay, and again this is more like a suit sleeve. Okay, so it has to come down this way. It should have something like cap, sleeve cap at the end, though it doesn't have a sleeve cap, but it should be um a kind of slopey this way. All right, because it's like suits, or I will just call it suit sleeve. Okay, so I proceeded to measure my upper bicep and lower bicep. That is my round sleeve, and I went on to connect. Okay, so you can see what we have here. So this is all what we have, and I'm just going to cut it out. So note that I'm here to put my allowance. So when you are cutting on your main fabric, do not hesitate to add your allowance. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate. Please stay tuned and don't go away. See you next time when I upload another interesting tutorials like this. Bye.